The railroad collection in Bob Willaford's front yard was stunning. Track speeders of most every description. Signs, signals, even a working semaphore. This collection isn't just some post-retirement hobby for the Plant City, Florida native. The railroad runs deep in Bob Willaford's DNA.
Well, I reckon you could say that I got interested in railroading when I was born, because my mother and father lived right side of the ACL main line on the west side of town, and that was away from the Alexander Street and away from Howard Street, so that was a whistle-blowing part of the railroad right there. And so I reckon when they didn't have a hospital in Plant City, so my mother went to Tampa, and I reckon the first noise I heard was a train whistle when I got home.
The centerpiece of Bob's collection is his Seaboard M930 model caboose. The old cab is in beautiful shape now, but Bob didn't find it that way.
Kurt Brinson, a friend of mine, he told me about caboose in Wildwood, on the Wildwood branch out on the Orlando branch, they called it, out of Wildwood. So I went up there and I bought 3 cabooses, and the track, the rail, the cross ties, and everything. I sold one that was gutted out. It was gutted out in bad shape. And I brought 2 back, and I got one at my barn I just used for storage. I got on track, but I just used it for storage for farm equipment. And then I brought this 5735 here, and it was all the windows broken out, and that was in 2005. So we got it in August of 2005.
In late 2011, Willaford added a Whitcomb switcher locomotive to his display. It too was in terrible shape when he found it.
It was sitting up in the woods. It come down from Vermont, where the locomotive came down from Vermont. It was in a granite mine up there in Vermont, switcher mine. We would use it for switcher service. And he had it up in the woods on a spur track, and people went up there and shot all the windows out, shot the whistle, stole the whistle, the horn off of it, stole the bell, and shot the headlights out. All the glasses broke out. And so I just looked at that thing, and I looked at it. It was just pure brown. It was just a rust bucket is all it was. I negotiated 5 years with him. 5 years I negotiated with him. And finally one day we got to be real good friends, and he'd come down and we'd go out and eat. And he'd come down one day and we were sitting in that bench, that railroad bench over there. And I told him, I said, that locomotive would look good sitting underneath the oak tree right over there. And he looked over and he said, I think it would. I think it would. So about 2 weeks later, he called me. We made a deal on it, and we got it down here and had it sandblasted and painted. And I had it, the idea of it was to put the Seaboard green, the old Army green with the yellow stripe down the side of it, and put the Seaboard emblem on it. And my granddaughter came out here and looked at the Line South calendar, and there the Line South calendar showed the Atlantic Coastline Streamline Pasture Engine painted in purple. And they said, Papa, you're going to paint it purple. I said, no, we're not going to paint it. They said, well, if you don't paint it purple, we're not going to come out here and help you with it. We're not going to help you with it. I said, well, okay, so it got painted purple that way.
In 2013, the Plant City Chamber of Commerce started construction of a new railfan viewing park at the city's depot. The park's draw would be a new 2-story viewing platform right on the CSX at-grade railroad crossing. But the chamber wanted to create a whole railfan experience for visitors. They immediately turned an eye to Bob Willaford's railroad collection. It didn't take too much convincing. So, after some months of negotiations, Bob finally agreed to donate the collection and move it the 3.5 miles from his home to the downtown depot. When it all arrived, Plant City crowds turned out for the show. Trucks were positioned first, exactly 32 feet 4 inches apart for the pins to line up with the holes on the caboose. Then at last, the caboose was swung into place and seated on the trucks. The caboose image has become a colorful icon of railroad's golden age, and many of us forget that they had a real function on freight trains of those days.
Back in them days, you had a flagman and a conductor on it. And that was where the conductor done all the paperwork. You didn't have the computers, so you had all the paperwork, way bills. And he would get a line. He knew every car on his train, what was in it. And then when he sent cars off, he had to put the in a plastic bag, or they'd stick them in the draw head of the numbers of the cars they set off. And then when they picked up cars and all that, and then when he got to the yard, back in the yard, all that paperwork that he'd done all day went to the yard master, and then that's where they billed the cars, or charge the cars, or freight charges, and all like that from. But the conductor done just about. The caboose was an office. It was a train moving office is what it was. And they had the flagman back there, because if you stopped out on dark territory and you knew another train was coming, the flagman had to get off and go back like 1 mile to flag the train down that was following you. So then when you got ready to leave, the engineer would blow 4 times. That means for the flagman to come from the south to the north. You blow 5 times meant the flagman would come from the north to the south. And a lot of times you didn't have radios. So you just waited to give him time to walk that distance, then he'd put down either torpedoes or he'd drop flares, 10-minute fusees. And then you start pulling. If he wasn't ready to get on the caboose, they'd put air on you. Stop you and then pump the air back off, wait a few more minutes, try pulling. Once you tried pulling and the train moved, you knew that everybody was in place.
After the caboose was seated, the Whitcomb switcher was right behind. It will remain in purple and silver livery at the park, just like the granddaughters wanted. At Plant City, Florida, at the new Robert W. Willaford Railfan Park, this is Danny Harmon, out.